Yeah. Who wants to hear a story? I know I do. Hey you, sitting there with nothing to do, why don't you come over here and maybe try something new? Yes you, don't waste your time just planting your seeds. Let's partake in FlameAmigo619 reads. You gotta pick, he'll read ya, hilarity he'll feed ya, or maybe deep emotions, whatever the feeling doesn't matter. Either solo or with friends, we're going on a trip to faraway places, or maybe not, just take a tip from me. He does have some standards, they're not far-fetched, it's a stretch, so keep that in mind, don't be a bitch. So kick up your feet, find something comfy to sit in, and enjoy the show. Now let us begin.
Greetings, every peoples. Welcome to yet another edition of FlameAmigo619 Reads. I am your cult of personality, ToonKriticY2K, FlameAmigo619. And I'm just going to start off by asking every peoples, who likes Winnie the Pooh? Who genuinely likes Winnie the Pooh?
I do.
This guy. I think a better question is who does not like Winnie the Pooh?
No, actually, a better question: who can't love Winnie the Pooh?
Today, I present to you a double feature, a Winnie the Pooh double feature, centering around Tigger, Roo, and Kanga.
Already, I can hear the smell of sweet, sweet yaoi ideas.
I think that's just me.
No, wait, I'm sorry. Three-way ideas, my bad, since one of them is a
Yeah. No, we aren't going anywhere near that. We aren't going anywhere near that. We're not going to ruin anybody's childhoods.
Aw,
Hopefully.
you're no fun anymore.
Besides, I've already ruined Tom and Jerry for you. What can I do next?
Thank you for the reminder.
You also ruined Scooby-Doo a few months ago.
Oh yeah, there was that too. That was interesting.
Not when
But anyway,
that show deserved it.
So, we have two stories. One is called Roo Wants a Dad, and the other one is To Dote. We're going to be starting off with Roo Wants a Dad. This was written by an anonymous author. We do not know who it was, but for saying who it was by, I'm going off the fanfiction author, which is Seventh Sinner. We have people here today. These include Joey,
Present.
Julie,
I finally remembered my name. Yay!
Will,
Yo, what be up, biatches?
new for this stream, Jake,
Welcome back to Pooh! Finish that sentence.
Sam,
Right, I know my name. Now someone tell me which genitalia I have.
Jimmy,
Evening all.
and Sage.
Why did I have to subject myself to Gangnam Style?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Oh yeah, Sam, when you watch the live stream, make sure to watch it. Anyway, you know what? I just want to quickly say something. Going from Sonic.exe to this is a very weird transition. I have to pray that none of them die. Or if this turns into like a gory as hell story. Roo Wants a Dad, you're gonna fucking love me. This is Roo Wants a Dad. Certainly there had always been something there. From nearly the moment Kanga and Roo had arrived at the 100-acre wood, Tigger had tried his best to always present himself as perfect of a gentleman as he understood how to the lovely single mother. It was a rather inexplicable phenomenon to most of the inhabitants of the wood, but whenever Tigger was near Kanga, he felt the need to turn on his natural charm to its max. It was even more inexplicable the way he seemed to transform from a bouncing Tigger to a giggling sheep whenever Kanga called him dear. Whether it was obvious to anyone or everyone who knew them, Tigger had an innocent crush on Miss Kanga, although it was clear she wasn't a Miss anymore. Mrs. I can't tell the difference. Instead, it was Roo who received Tigger's attention more than his mother. The little nipper was Tigger's best bouncing buddy. There was a natural spark of friendship and love that existed from day one. Quickly, they became practically inseparable. For Tigger had finally found someone else who loved bouncing as much as him, and Roo had finally found the strong male influence sorely lacking in his home. It was their bond which first opened Kanga's heart to the lovable striped bouncer. She quickly noticed the way Tigger treated her son, and it warmed her through and through. Kanga grew fonder and fonder of Tigger as he grew closer and closer to her son. Of course, it started out as innocent as Tigger's crush. She pitied him, cared for him in his times of need, or called him dear more times than she maybe should. In short, many would often mistake it for her motherly tendencies, but a closer look from someone who knew about such matters would see it as the first step towards something more. The relationship continued on for some time in this matter, Tigger blushing whenever he came to see Roo and Kanga, treating him just a little bit more special than the others. However, it began to take a sharp turn. All at once, Kanga found herself depending on Tigger, worrying about Tigger, going out of her way to make sure Tigger was okay. Likewise, Tigger found himself growing bolder around Kanga, even holding her hand and confronting her when she needed it. It didn't take long for this to lead to a new understanding of their deeper feelings for one another.
So this is probably a bad time to mention you said confronting when it says comforting.
I don't give a fuck. We are unprofessional for a reason. No longer could Kanga consider Tigger to be like a son just because Rue considered him to be a big brother, and no longer could Tigger strictly consider himself Rue's big brother, though he would never tell Rue this. Both were finally aware of a very different kind of love, but it was a precarious situation indeed for the two inhabitants of the 100-Acre Wood. What would the others think? What would Rue think? It was confusing enough for them, let alone without others knowing about it and offering their own 2 cents. Rabbit especially would probably do his best to ruin things for them with his usual "it simply isn't done" mantra. Asshole. Kanga was too polite and nurturing to ever want to hurt any of her friends, and Tigger, well, he was lovable, but not the most graceful in awkward situations, and rather on the clueless side of things at times. What were the 2 poor animals to do? At last, the chance finally came for them to face their predicament face to face.
The little guy's finally asleep.
Tigger announced with a trademark chuckle as he came from Rue's room. After spending the day with Tigger, and Tigger having joined them for supper, Rue had requested Tigger tell him a bedtime story and tuck him in that night. Kanga had agreed, smiling with her secret thoughts of how it made her love Tigger even more. She was certain no one else in the 100-Acre Wood, excluding herself, loved Rue more than Tigger, and what better reason could there be for wanting him to be with them at all times?
That's nice.
Kanga responded as she put aside her knitting and stood from her chair.
Would you like a cup of tea, darling?
No longer did she only call him dear when they were alone. She headed towards the kitchen to start a pot of water boiling, already knowing this answer.
A cup of tea is tactically what I would like, thank you.
He smiled and joined her at the stove.
You know me so well.
Kanga was also the only one in the wood who knew him well enough to know how to make tea the way he liked it. She returned the smile as his lips tickled her ear a little. As they stood there waiting for the water to boil, Tigger rather subconsciously placed an arm about Kanga's shoulders, and she found herself resting her head on his shoulder in turn. It was a feeling she could get used to, but would never want to, for fear it would be less enjoyable than it was at that very moment. She gave a contented sigh.
If only it could be like this every night, Tigger.
Then I would be a very happy Tigger indeedy.
Tigger chuckled again before adding,
But, why can't it be like this? Again.
He scratched his head with his free hand. Kanga smiled, in spite of herself. She loved Tigger dearly, but no matter his age, he would always be a bit like a child with a short attention span.
Because we have to think about the others, Tigger. Rue would certainly be confused and Christopher Robin might not approve. And I shouldn't think any of our other friends would understand.
She reminded him. Honestly, it was hard to tell what anyone would think. At times they embraced each other and knew things with open arms, but at other times they were not as easily convinced, and often it took some sort of mishap or another to bring them around.
Oh yeah. Right.
He did remember, as was evident by his somber tone.
It isn't fair.
Tigger sounded like a whiny child, but for very good reason.
Well, maybe if we... No, that's not... We could... No, that's just ridiculous. There's always...
Tigger continued to ponder it carefully. Kanga laughed delightfully until a soft voice startled them both from behind. Kanga's heart dropped as she realized how careless it was to have assumed Rue wouldn't wake up and find them.
I just realized I'm being typecast as the Joey.
Exactly. No, really? You don't say. You don't say.
Kanga and Tigger shared an awkward look of knowing before they both turned to look at the little Joey. Perhaps he would just think their position friendly, Kanga thought. After all, physical contact wasn't exactly a taboo in the 100-Acre Wood, and Tigger was already considered family.
Hi, Rue. What's the matter?
Kanga asked lovingly, hiding any guilt she might have.
Well, my dream was getting a little scary, so I decided to wake up before it could turn into a real nightmare.
Rue answered.
Why, that's very clever, Rue, dear.
Kanga smiled as she hopped over to her son.
Yeah, that's using the old noodle buddy boy.
Tigger added, warranting a smile from him.
Would you like some tea before you go back to bed?
Kanga asked, and it was answered with a quick nod.
Alright, the water should be just about done.
Sure enough, the teapot gave a whistle. She went back to the stove as Tigger and Rue sat down at the table. Rue seemed unusually quiet, but Kanga assumed it was because he was still sleepy. However, hesitance
Tigger?
proved that perhaps he had been in quiet thought instead.
Don't be mad at me.
He finally added.
Why would I be mad at you, Rue boy?
Tigger asked in confusion. There was another round of silence as Rue mustered up the courage to say whatever it was he wanted to say.
Because I don't want you to be my bestest big brother anymore.
Gasp!
There was a loud gasp from Tigger, and a soft one from Kanga, as Rue wrung his hands and shirt guiltily.
But, I don't understand!
Tigger's feelings had certainly been injured by the boy's sudden confession.
Did I do something wrong?
You slept with my mom and you typecast me as the kangaroo!
He's a
I'm sorry,
Joey.
I just had to put that in there.
No, of course not, Tigger.
Rue responded quickly and reassuring, leaving his mother and Tigger even more confused.
It's just, I've already got a mama, but I've never had a papa, and...
Rue gulped a little as he let his train of thought trail. It was fortunate that Kanga had not yet grabbed the tray of tea things, or else she was certain it would have fallen to the floor as she quickly processed what her son meant.
Oh dear. What do you mean?
Kanga moved closer to the table.
Would you like...
She found herself unable to finish, almost afraid she was mistaken, and any confession would make things worse. Rue nodded, however, and she turned and looked at Tigger with wide eyes.
I can't believe it.
I can't believe it too.
Tigger looked back and forth between Kanga and Rue, but it was soon clear he wasn't quite as capable at following what had just happened.
But what exactly can't we believe?
Kanga looked at her son once more.
Rue dear, would you like to finish telling Tigger what you wanted to say?
It was more of an encouragement than a question.
Tigger, I don't want you to be my bestest big brother anymore because I want you to be my bestest dad instead.
Rue hung his head as though he was ashamed of admitting it.
If you don't want to, I understand. But I'm sure Mama wouldn't mind, right, Mama?
Kanga giggled at her son's innocence.
I certainly wouldn't mind. In fact, Rue, I love Tigger very much.
She decided it was time to admit it to him. She wondered how long he had wanted to ask Tigger to be his dad, or if his seeing her and Tigger together had prompted the question. Could it be just as easy to tell everyone else in the wood? Maybe they shouldn't have been so afraid.
And I promise to be the bestest son ever.
Rue continued, still trying to convince Tigger. At this, Tigger finally spoke.
Why, of course you would be, Rue boy.
His smile grew bigger than it had ever been, as everything finally clicked in his mind and he understood fully what had just happened. He began bouncing around excitedly, Rue hopping up onto the table with no scolding from his mother for once, to bounce excitedly as well.
Why, you and I could go bouncing every day and... Oh, wait! We already do that. But they would be extra special fatherly sunny bounces. And we could do other fatherly sunny things, which of course aren't to be figured out with a calculated at a future date. That's not this one.
His excitement caused him to spout his thoughts in a somewhat confused manner. He grabbed Rue's hands and began bouncing around in circles. After a few moments, he let go and grabbed Kanga's hands and began bouncing her in circles as well, her laughing unexpectedly at the gesture. Tigger suddenly stopped and looked at Kanga with a serious expression, a new and very rational thought forming in his Tigger brain.
I can be with you all the time.
Yes, Tigger. All the time.
Kanga smiled as she squeezed his hands affirmatively. They gazed at one another in silence for a moment, neither one entirely sure what came next. But just when both were certain they would no longer be able to breathe from how perfect they felt, Tigger turned his head slightly, breaking the mood. He had noticed Rue from the corner of his eye. The little Joey was smiling as he looked at the ground, but it was also obvious he was a little hesitant about everything that had taken place. After all, it was quite clear that his mother would now get quite a deal of Tigger's attention. It was only natural for him to feel just a little bit jealous. Of course, he didn't want to admit it either.
Wait just a cotton-picking second.
Tigger let go of one of Kanga's hands and grabbed one of Rue's.
I think I maybe should have said I can be with both of you all the time.
He smiled and Rue's face lit up. Kanga's heart warmed to this, knowing yet again that no one was more perfect for her and her son than Tigger.
And we'll be a family!
Rue cheered. He eagerly grabbed his mother's free hand and the three proceeded to bounce around in a happy circle.
Absolutely, Rue boy!
Tigger laughed excitedly as they continued in their merry bouncing until he finally stopped.
But,
What's the matter, Tigger?
After asking, Roo suddenly wondered if he were to always call him Tigger, or if he would now need to call him by some paternal address. He would have to ask his mother about it later, he resolved.
well,
He let go of their hands and tapped his chin.
I get the feeling that something's not right and this out of order or etc.
He thought some more before then exclaiming.
Of course! Silly me!
He leaned down and whispered in Roo's ear.
You're gonna do what with your tail?
Let's save that for the uncut version.
Well, no, seriously.
Thank you for ruining the mood, asshole.
He's what I do, broski. But I digress. Oh.
Roo nodded before hopping out of the room. Meanwhile, Kanga watched in complete confusion, wondering what Tigger's dilemma was, or what he had sent Roo to do. Her confusion grew as Roo returned with a very familiar locket in hand.
Here you go, Tigger.
He handed it to him with a wink.
Wink.
Now, to do this proper-like.
He returned the wink and then turned towards Kanga. She gasped in slight shock as he got down on one knee. It was the last thing she had expected, but it wasn't entirely unwanted either.
Mrs. Kanga, ma'am.
He gulped. It was a funny thing since he was already aware of how she felt. Yet he still felt suddenly shy.
Would you let me be Ruth's dad if it isn't too much trouble? I promise to be the bestest Tigger. I know how to be for both of you, and I'll only bounce on Saturdays if you want.
He slightly rambled.
What do you say?
Now for my adorable British accent. Yes, Baba. What's he say?
Roo chimed in.
Damn it, Roo.
Kanga tried to hold back tears of happiness.
Well, I say yes, of course.
Tigger leapt to his feet and hugged Kanga before she had the chance to even blink. She hugged him back as he spun them both around, bouncing a few times as he did.
On one condition.
She managed to add suddenly, and Tigger stopped. He looked at her in confusion.
You have to promise to bounce every day, not just on Saturday.
She smiled.
Not a problem!
Tigger responded happily.
Yay!
Roo cheered.
And then we're gonna be a family, and maybe Tigger gets each of the super duper loop-de-looper out of you per bounce, mama!
Roo demonstrated the infamous bounce as he said it, bouncing all around the room as Tigger and Kanga watched proudly.
We'll see, dear.
Kanga said with a slight chuckle, turning to face Tigger.
We'll see.
She said again as she hugged Tigger once more, only perhaps a bit tighter this time. Thus was the night in the 100-acre wood when Tigger, Kanga, and Roo decided they would become a family much different than they already were. The end.
Okay, I'm done.
This Vic thinks like my panda cock.
What?
What?
Nothing.
Shut up.
Oh, yes, nothing.
Okay, this fic was sweet.
It was touching in places. I mean,
It
nothing.
was very well written, I thought.
This was too cute.
This is part 1 of the special double feature. We will see you in part 2.
This is where the fucked up shit happens.
Better get your
Da-da-da.
barf ready.
Kanga was the only one in the wood who knew... Wait. I thought I was about to say hood for a second. God damn.
Oh my
Underneath
god.
your hood.
It's like, yo, Kanga know only Tigger in the hood, bitches.
Who in the hood? Oh my god, that should be a TV series.
I'm keeping that in.
Huffling is what Tiggers do the best, mother effer.
Yeah.
Kanga was also the only one in the hood who knew him well enough to know how to make tea.
Said hood.
Excuse me, 1 second. I need to get my bearings straight. I gotta close the door too. Hang on.
Permission.
I want you to be my destined... my
Restus.
Yes. I want you to be my breastus. I am becoming a woman, Joey.
He began bouncing around excitedly, Rue hopping up into the table with no the fuck is that word?
Admonition. Ammunition.
It's a fancy word.
With no blair.
Fancy words makes my dick hurt.
She said it. Big words make my dick
Oh.
hurt.